Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all things Bitcoin, some macro charts and indicators. So let's start off with fear and greed. And as you can see, crypto, we are still in the greed territory. As Bitcoin was making recently a new all-time high, we only touched on extreme greed just for a moment. So we'll take a look at the charts, show you why that is. But as you can see, macro wise, if we're taking a look at fear and greed, we do have these higher lows. So is Bitcoin close to breaking one way or the other? I think September, which is traditionally bearish, as we take a look here on the seasonality charts, it is something to keep in your mind that if we keep getting rejected by extreme greed, that maybe we get a pullback in September before the true pump, before the typical 4-year cycle. And speaking of 4-year cycle, let's go over to this chart right here. We take a look at the last few cycle tops. We can see that we have these tops in November or December, the post-halving year. So as you can see, that was November, December 2013. 4 years later, December 2017. 4 years later, November 21. Albeit we did have alt season here, there was all that money printing, and I think that's why it happened earlier last time. But if we just stick with the normal 4-year cycle plan, then we are looking again at November, December, and you can take a look at blockchaincenter.net to see where that general logarithmic regression might lead us. I'm looking at those orange boxes somewhere between 150 to the low 200K area. And one of the main reasons for that on this logarithmic regression, you see how these peaks get a little lower. And I've shown the data before, I'll show it again, as to other indicators that are showing our topping range may be in that 150 to low 200K area. I think it's even more apparent if we take a look at the former rainbow chart, how these peaks get lower in these bands every time as well. So, are we going to expect something like 200, 210K Bitcoin? Possibly. And I do see the comments that, the rainbow chart has been broken before. I get it. This is one data point. But I think if we compare it against other data points, then we start to notice something. So right now, I do believe that we have certainly entered into phase 2 of the path to alt season. Phase 1, Bitcoin was outperforming everything. But recently, I have seen the charts Ethereum Bitcoin showing that Ethereum Bitcoin is breaking through some key levels. We have to take a look at this today. This is probably going to be the most important part of the video. So next, after we get closer to the top, we should start seeing the rotation into large caps. Things like Chainlink, Cardano, many of those large caps, maybe even Tron, who knows? But we should see that. And then the true alt season happens, at least the last 2 cycles, it happens after Bitcoin tops. I'll show you that here. Once Bitcoin tops, the few weeks following is when we get this rotation from Bitcoin into the large caps, the small caps. So that is what we're waiting for. On my channel, I talk about other crypto assets, altcoins, Bitcoin mining stocks. We even talk about the stock market. I might double up on videos today. Was visiting with some family, so that's why there's no videos still today, but had to get some quality family time in. It's the summer. I know y'all understand. So we are back with videos, and this is an important time to be back. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. And as we can see here, we'll zoom in. We'll go to the daily here for a second. So I drew this fib from the all-time high that we made here back in May to the next low. And the 1618 extension there is at 120.5. Now, we did get up to that extension, but you can see we never had a whole candle body closing above. And yesterday or today's candle, Heikinashi, is showing a clear rejection by that. So if we throw on some of our moving averages, you can see the 20s right there. And it's possible we might get a 20-day moving average bounce and then shoot up further. If we do, the next area is around 134. But we do have this area support, the 50-day moving average, as well as the inverse head and shoulder trend line. You can see shoulder, head, shoulder. We do have all that at around 114, 115. So if we get a pullback to 114, 115 at worst, I'm not too worried. Below that, then we might be chopping maybe all the way down to 110. But I am expecting 134K Bitcoin next. And as we zoom out, let's go back to the weekly. And by the way, the weekly shows that rejection off that 1618 line even more. But again, we could blast through that soon. On the weekly, when we take a look at our macro fib from the 21 high to the 22 low, we can see that the next extension is a 2618. And this is one of the things I was talking about. Let's clean this up a little bit. We'll get rid of that fib. One of the things I was talking about on the rainbow chart, how we have a possibility of topping if we just take the general log trend of the lower highs and the tops, that we were looking at this 2618 to 3618 area. If we go to the last cycle where the top was, we can take a look here and see that Bitcoin will just go from high to low here. The fib extensions got to the 4236 3618 area, and every cycle we hit a lower fib extension. We can even take that from the 2013 top, and as you can see, the extension is something crazy like 10.618 or something. We don't have to take a look at that today. But the point being is that the fib extensions are showing lower each time. Now, this time, the one thing that is different is inflation. Since 2020 and all that money printing I talked about earlier, our dollars are worth about 20-25% less. So I think that can give us a target 20-25% above the typical range. And that's why I'm looking somewhere, I would originally target this 2618, inflation notwithstanding, but I would be looking closer to the middle upper area of this indicator. A couple other indicators that we've been watching a lot. The pi cycle, which I don't think is going to trigger this time around, and the log regression on the weekly. Log regression on the weekly, you can see how the tops the last two cycles were right near the, let's just say 75% of the way up. And this time around, if we're to get up there, you see the pi cycle moving average. We tagged it before in March of 24. This is near the upper area of that log regression and that 3618 at around 210. So if Bitcoin all of a sudden just turns on the afterburners and becomes mega bullish, I'd be watching this area here at around 200K Bitcoin. I know people are saying crazy stuff like 300K Bitcoin, 500K Bitcoin. I just don't see it. And I think the fibs, the rainbow chart, this log regression band, which is, kind of another way of looking at the rainbow chart, and the pi cycle all confirm that as well. A couple other indicators to take a look at here for Bitcoin that I think go well for many stocks and cryptos is the MACD and the stochastic RSI. Let's take a look at these together. So this would be concerning on the weekly, that we do see the MACD losing a little bit of strength. If it starts to flip negative, that's bad. The stochastic as well, is that getting ready to reset? Doesn't mean it has to fall off completely. Sometimes the stochastic can just reset and go a little bit sideways, so that is possible, or we get another major bump. But I think if we go to the monthly time frame, and here we go, the monthly time frame is showing actually quite the opposite, that we're still very bullish with the stochastic RSI as well as the MACD. One of the indicators I've been watching as well is the ultimate RSI. And the ultimate RSI, if we take a look at the monthly, you can see how this thing tops out. And we could take a look at it horizontally, or you could take a look at it sort of as these lower highs as well. But either way, it shows us that we still have room to run. Are we getting close to that? If we do tag this, I'll talk about that on the channel. It's something to be wary of, but that is another indicator worth keeping in mind as well. Let's go over to Ethereum-Bitcoin. As I said, this is one of those indicators that we have to talk about today. And I think this is confirming that we are definitely in phase two. We've been sort of questioning that. The last time I did one of these videos, we were right here. And I was saying that when we take a look at fibs from high to low, I didn't include that wick here because the price action excuse me, honors the fibs when we go from the original high. But when we go high to low, we were stuck right at the macro 382 and the 50-week moving average. Now, those are both dividing lines between being very bullish or bearish. So if you're above the 50-week moving average, you are bullish for a stock or crypto. If you're below, you're bearish. Macro 382, if you're below it, you could still technically put in lower lows. So getting above both that is huge. And let's just go over to before when we saw that. In 2020, you can see rejection, rejection, rejection off the 50-week moving average. But once we got above that, we were within a year of alt season. You can see you got back under that 382 Fibonacci line. But once we truly stayed above it, this is March of 21. Right here is alt season. Right here is when altcoins went parabolic and just did great during that time. So do keep that in mind that right here, that was alt season. And let's go back even to 2017. This was a mega V reversal. You can see that 382 right here was alt season, late December into early January. I talked about how Bitcoin has this rotation. I think this will show us pretty well that Bitcoin, you can see where it's topping out. And when we get that rotation, that is when all that money rotates into Ethereum on this chart or into altcoins. So again, let's go to this chart or this graph that I showed you before. Screenshot this. Have this in your memory on your phone. Make sure you look at this and understand that this is what everyone's waiting for. Once we get that rotation and Ethereum is doing a 2x and Bitcoin looks like it's stopped, guys, that's the time to seriously consider taking profits. Now, last cycle with the double top, there were some altcoins, not all, not even most, that put in their tops on the second top here in November 21, but most of them topped here. So if the metrics, Ethereum, Bitcoin dominance are showing that is the end of the cycle, it might be smart to take some profits there and just wait for the next macro low. Otherwise, you're gambling. So right here, 2017, Bitcoin topped from the top. We had that massive rotation into alts. That's why alt season is so great. Right here, again, from that 382 when it was for sure going up, that was when Bitcoin was topping. We had that rotation as well. And by the way, by the time Ethereum tops against Bitcoin, the alt season is done. Many of the altcoins have finished. So going back over to this cycle, you can see we're above that 382. If all of a sudden Ethereum, Bitcoin starts getting to, by the time the last two alt seasons have ended, I know the dates pretty well. It was January 8th right here, and you can say it was at 0.5. Let's just say 0.4 to 0.5 in that range. And May 10th, this is May 3rd to May 10th, is about, again, 0.4 to 0.5. So when Ethereum, Bitcoin has been 0.4 to 0.5 or getting even 0.3 to 0.4, that is go time for altcoins. Now, is this going to happen, by October? Are we going to have an early top that comes just a few months before the 4-year cycle where September isn't bearish? That is possible. Anything's possible. But again, what to watch for, instead of being caught up in predictions with when things have to happen, let the data lead the way. If all of a sudden ETH Bitcoin is getting up into these areas, you seriously have to consider taking profits. Let's go over to Bitcoin dominance and turn on our moving average again. Bitcoin dominance, here's another very bullish indicator, the 50-week moving average. Bitcoin dominance is broken underneath that. So right now, 60% of all money in crypto is in Bitcoin. What this means is that rotation has started. Now, I was wondering if we were going to get up to 71%. That still might happen. And I'll also say, we have had these double tops in Bitcoin dominance before the true rotation. Last cycle, there's a big double top before the true rotation happened. I'm wondering, are we going to get something like that again? If we throw on an RSI, I think the stochastic shows us this pretty well. When we go to the monthly, you can see how we get these double bottoms in the stochastic RSI. Here was bearish divergence. This was already down, and dominance came down later as it was coiling back up. Last cycle, we had this double bottom with the stochastic, and it bottomed with it. Are we going to get another bottom or double bottom with the stochastic RSI? Something to watch for that. If all of a sudden the stochastic RSI just tanks and Bitcoin dominance maybe gets stuck at the 50-month moving average, I don't think we will have had alt season yet, in my personal opinion. I am looking for alt season to be, again, where Ethereum, Bitcoin is at zero point 0.4 to 0.5, at least 0.4, but Bitcoin dominance is, somewhere down in the mid 40 range. So right now, breaking underneath that 50-week moving average, that is a great sign. That means we have for sure entered this phase two. I cannot state this enough. That is huge. And when we take a look at these, the alt season metric, you can see right here, maybe we're getting ready for one of these spikes. If on the yearly frame, and remember, I'm here on the yearly, not the shorter time frame. If all of a sudden this starts spiking up above 60, your altcoins are going to be doing very well if you got on the right altcoins. Let's take a look at total three. Total three getting back up to that former all-time high line. And here's another indicator. Last cycle, once total three broke above the 2018, 2017 all-time high, total three is the total market cap outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So all the large caps, small caps, everything. Once it broke above, this was February. We were just a few months away from finishing alt season here in early May. You can see that May 3rd to May 10th area, just like I talked about before. So again, we just had basically 2.5 months here from that break. So if all of a sudden total three breaks above, do we have about 2 months left? Could we get an early October top? We have to consider this if all of a sudden these metrics start going off, or just be ready for our altcoins to explode and be ready to take profits. When these metrics start triggering, that won't be the time to buy anymore. You will be chasing and gambling. Let me make that clear. It'll become more risky. So if your altcoin, if you pick the right one, and I won't tell you if it's the right one or not, but if you do pick the right one early enough and there's still a little bit of time, then you will be very happy about that. If we take a look at others, Dash Bitcoin, it's still on the 20. We have to get above the 50. We've challenged all these moving averages before. So if others Dash Bitcoin, this really goes off at the end. You can see here by the time this started going off last cycle, it was January. Remember that February area? This is where total three was breaking. And we just had a couple months here where it went parabolic. So is others Dash Bitcoin, others is all the market cap outside the top 10. Is it going to get back up into this 30% range? Maybe, but that is something to keep in mind. Tether dominance, we have to take a look at this. Tether dominance, it might be getting ready to go down to somewhere around that 3.5% area. And if so, I think Tether dominance can show us where a local bottom might be. And, something to consider, we have had this 50-month moving average, which was kind of support almost, and then turned into resistance a little bit. You can see how the 20-month moving average is resistance as well as the 50. So maybe that 100-month moving average is telling us where the next top might be, which could be somewhere around 3.5%. By the way, Tether, right now, 4.2% of all money in crypto is in Tether. Tether is a value of $1. And so if it has a value of $1, as it shows right here, that means that people are rotating into Tether in order to be risk off. But when they're rotating out of Tether, as they're doing now, it's because it's risk on and they're looking for crypto to pump even further. So you can hit the refresh here, make sure things are all up to date. So yeah, Tether, it's always around $1. Anyways, some big news, big things to talk about. Always seems to be that that the big news happens on the weeks where I'm traveling, visiting family, work trips, whatever. But we're all caught up now. And let me know what you think in the comments below. How are you feeling about this phase two Ethereum Bitcoin flip? And do you think that, is the data showing us that we're going to get a September pullback in a typical 4-year cycle, or might we get an early top if this trend continues? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic weekend. Take care.